Okay, I'll use this. Probably don't need this now. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. This is my second FlashGAMM, or DevGAMM now, as it's called. It's kind of exciting. I like coming back here. It's very friendly. Always, everyone looks happy whenever I'm around in Kyiv. It's great. Yeah, so I'm here to talk about Away3D and the new stuff that we've been working on with WebGL and TypeScript, which is kind of an interesting development, really. I think that there's some very useful areas that TypeScript fulfills in the native browser development world, and we'll have a look at that, and then have a look at some of the stuff that our team's been working on in the new version of Away3D, which is not so much a new version, but more a porting of the existing library that exists in the Flash player. So first of all, my name is Rob Bateman, and that is my Twitter handle if you want to follow updates. We also have Away3D as our official Away3D framework Twitter handle. You can follow that as well. But recently we've been posting more and more of information around the new stuff that we've been doing with WebGL. And it is very interesting. But our main user base still lies in the Flash world, and so we are still maintaining and updating the Away3D Flash player, Away3D Flash version, obviously. So expect to see some updates coming early in next year, around maybe February time, on the Flash side, if you are using that at the moment for your own projects or whatever. And overall, Away3D has been going for about 6 years. I'm one of the original founding members. The other one being Alexander Zadorozny, who is from right here in Kyiv. So we have a kind of connection. It's nice to sort of come over here every now and then to see how things are going. Anyway, we have. Oh yes, sorry, there's the Twitter for Away3D, and also the Away Foundation, which is our official organization that manages and develops the Away3D these days. The Away Foundation is a non-profit, set up as a non-profit organization, so we rely on sponsorship money from companies and people like yourself. So people donate to us if they feel like they have had a good experience with Away3D and it's helped them with their game, or people like Adobe actually help us with the development and distribution and so on these days. So we're part of the Adobe Gaming SDK, which is now in its 1.3 incarnation, I think. 1.4 will be coming around February time, which will obviously be involved in the update. So yeah, there's still a lot going on the Flash side of things, and we certainly are not slowing that down anytime soon. I have a sort of video of showcase material, but since time is short, I'll just sort of play a little bit of it and then skip on, and we don't have any sound anyway, so I'll just sort of talk over. But Away3D is used for a heap of different kind of things. Games is pretty much the main focus, but we also used for interactive experiments, advertising sites, multiplayer experiences, museum installations. There's a lot of different areas that we are used in, and one of the great things about working with Away3D and expanding it and developing it is the amazing content that people produce with it. So we're very thankful to our community, and we try and look after our community and listen to them, and we have forums on our site, away3d.com, where you can get support and so on if you are thinking of developing using Away3D. But this is just a very brief selection of things that have been made over the last less than a year. So the content is always coming, new and exciting stuff, and it's always great to see what people do. So if you want to see, so that even isn't even the latest stuff. That video was made maybe 5 months ago, and there's already a heap more of stuff that we've, some of which we show on our showcase area. So if you go to away3d.com/showcase, which you can't actually see because it's cut off the top, but it says away3d.com/showcase, and we have updates there regularly on new material that comes in. We curate some of the best stuff that people send us and upload it to there for you to have a look at. So the real thing that I want to talk about is the new stuff we've been working on with TypeScript. Now, if you haven't heard of TypeScript, it's not necessarily a brand new language, but it is new in the sense that it's been released in the last year as an official sort of thing. What it actually is something that's been created by Microsoft based on the ECMA 5 spec. This is something that should be very familiar for ActionScript developers, because ActionScript actually comes from the ECMA group as well. In fact, ActionScript 3 is based on ECMA 3, I think, or 4, no, possibly 3 spec. So if you're an ActionScript developer, TypeScript has a lot of similarities because of that. It's a continuation, and if anything, it's almost an evolution of the language, because the ECMA spec is being updated and adding new features and so on. So it's not just sort of something that they just pulled out of a hat and, oh, here's a new language. Something has actually gone into this bit of thought and process and evolution, so far we've had quite a nice experience using it. But it is based around the JavaScript language, and you can actually write JavaScript within a TypeScript project, so it doesn't really restrict you in any way. The main advantage of using TypeScript is that it is strongly typed like ActionScript 3, so a lot of things are caught early if you're developing a complex application like a game. And then there's a compilation step which compiles the TypeScript version of your code down to a JavaScript version. And this isn't something that's entirely unheard of nowadays in the JavaScript world, because obviously you have minifiers and so on, which essentially are compilers if you think about it, and TypeScript is just an extra step in that chain. So it's quite a smooth process, and for ActionScript developers it's pretty familiar to most people. And obviously the other aspect is WebGL. Excuse me. WebGL's just been taking off recently, a lot more activity around it these days, and it is gaining ground in terms of the compatibility. So now we'll see a bit later how that's been evolving, but one of the reasons why we decided to start this conversion process for Away3D is that WebGL is now more compatible than it's ever been across browsers. So that obviously is a good thing for people who are concerned about how many people are actually going to be able to see the content you create. So we've set up a little mini site for everyone to have a look at on typescript.away3d.com. If you go there, you'll be able to see some demos that we've currently been producing based on the work that we've done with the conversion. There's a lot of stuff on there that is converted from older demos that are from the Flash library. So I'll just show you some of them now. So if you go there to the site, this is just a local version on my machine, but the URL is typescript.away3d.com. You'll see a bunch of examples down here, and a lot of these are testing the performance really of the framework, and I'll actually show you a bit more of that in a minute. I'm jumping ahead of myself, but you can kind of see, how things are coming together, and keep on, seeing updates as we post them on here. We're adding new demos here all the time, so it's a good place to come back to check out every now and again. So just going back to the language side of things for a brief minute, I'm saying that it's similar to ActionScript, and I'm assuming the majority of people in the room are ActionScript developers. In fact, actually, can we have a quick show of hands to see what sort of how many people are ActionScript developers or have done ActionScript development in the past here? Okay, so about half. Well, from an ActionScript perspective, which is where we're coming from, TypeScript is actually quite a convenient stepping stone. And you can kind of see on the left-hand side is a class in ActionScript, and on the right is a class in TypeScript. They are almost identical. The only real differences are that TypeScript is, if anything, a little bit less verbose, a little bit more brief, and you have things like the constructor in TypeScript, which replaces the full sort of name constructor in ActionScript. Things like function declaration and var declarations in the classes are not actually required in TypeScript. You just type the variable name, and it determines whether or not it's a function or a variable. And you have things like modules instead of packages, and export instead of public for the classes and so on. But you know, these things are cosmetic, if anything. It's not a big stepping stone by any means. Obviously, with some people in JavaScript, which I'm assuming the people who didn't put their hands up possibly are from, this is their reaction when you mention the word compiler. But it's not really like that. Like I said, it's you know, a progression, and compilers are a thing of JavaScript as it is anyway. So this is really just another link in the chain. The JavaScript that TypeScript produces is actually still quite readable. So this is an output from the same function that I just showed you a couple of slides back. And it really doesn't you know, make anything difficult for a JavaScript developer to read if they do want to read it. I'm still unsure why they would, but it's something which TypeScript outputs in a readable fashion if they are wanting to actually stick to JavaScript for their development. So it means that if you have a TypeScript development going on in your project, you can still have JavaScript developers working alongside, and it's not really that much of a disconnect. And the installation process for this is actually quite simple. All you need to do is install Node.js, which is the open source JavaScript server. And then on the command line, you type install TypeScript-G, and it downloads the latest TypeScript compiler, and you're good to go. There's also a handy little HTTP server install, which I always use for debugging. It's a very small footprint, and it's very easy to run on whatever directory you're working on, and then it's easy to test stuff through a server on the browser locally. Okay, so here are some more comprehensive demos of the Away3D TypeScript branch. And this is going to be one of those classic side-by-side comparisons, because obviously a lot of this is coming from the Flash side at the moment as we convert the entire library. So on the right on the left is TypeScript, and on the right is Flash. Interestingly, we've actually found some new bugs while converting to TypeScript that we've gone back to Flash to fix. So one of the ones, this is actually taken from an old branch of the Flash player. One of the ones that we found was to do with smoothing groups in the 3ds importer, and it's something that we've now fixed in the Flash branch. So it's actually being useful for us in the Flash development side of Away3D as well. TypeScript actually exposes some issues that were previously hidden in the ActionScript version. Another one here, you sort of also see that the fidelity is identical. There's no real difference in the way that the sort of the final result looks on the screen. So again, on the left-hand side, TypeScript. On the right-hand side, Flash. These are both interactive, and they both interact in the same way. So a lot of the shaders have already been converted, a lot of the material types, a lot of the file importers, and they're all being tested at the moment. This one is a little bit more, I'll just run this one on its own. This one is a little bit more processor intensive because there are around 400 avatars here being animated independently. And this was sort of more of a stress test. This runs best in the latest sort of bleeding edge build of Google Chrome, the Chrome Canary build. So even now, there are updates coming in the browsers that improve the, the performance of this kind of thing. But you can kind of see that even this is the plain old vanilla Chrome version that you download, the public version, and it runs perfectly. I mean, there's no real difference. On other browsers, that we find that sometimes the JavaScript performance perhaps isn't as good, but in terms of WebGL, we're not really talking about much because WebGL is ultimately addressing the GPU, which is the same benchmark for pretty much every browser. Here's another one. This is another demo converted. The particles demo. So this is using live animated particles in real time. And again, oh, hang on, I've gone and selected the wrong one there. Again, we find that it is pretty much identical in terms of performance and in terms of fidelity. Everything looks pretty much the same. We have had a few things with WebGL. It's been quite an interesting conversion. There are obviously some differences between that and Stage 3D, which is the Flash equivalent. Part of what we've done in the library is actually done an abstraction to WebGL, which is in a way a sort of Stage 3D abstraction in TypeScript. It's something which has actually been separated out into a separate part of the framework, and you can find it if you go to the GitHub repository, which I'll put the link up at the end, and find a separate package which actually contains this abstraction. It's something which we think potentially might be useful for other 3D engines who want to try the same thing in TypeScript in the future. Stage 3D, while it has a lot of similarities to WebGL, if you look at it more closely, it does have a little bit more of a forgiving nature to people actually wanting to code directly with it. And so for that reason, we feel that it is valuable potentially to others as well. So one of the big concerns with WebGL is current compatibility, and like I say, recently it's actually had a bit of an improvement. This is mainly down to Internet Explorer allowing WebGL in Internet Explorer 11. I say allow because generally speaking, this isn't a technical problem. It's more of a whether or not the browser vendor wants to enable it. So far, on the desktop at least, we actually have a pretty good coverage now. Of the 5 main browsers, all of them support WebGL to an extent, and we have full support on 3 of them. So I mean, that's pretty good going. I think that in terms of the Firefox and Safari support, that will be improving soon anyway. The biggest problem with Safari at the moment is the WebGL is not enabled by default. But we think that because of the way that the other browsers are pushing the technology, it shouldn't be long before that goes away. Ultimately, all the browsers started off with WebGL being disabled by default, but as things matured and have sort of strengthened and stabilized, everyone's been turning it on as a default so that it's not something that you need to worry about the user knowing about. And I think with the sort of a success that people like Firefox and Chrome have been getting with WebGL, IE and Safari and Firefox will be improving even further in the future. And another interesting area which is not really considered so much at the moment with WebGL is on mobile devices. There is actually quite a lot of support for WebGL on mobile devices at the moment. And if you have an Android phone, then you will absolutely be able to play WebGL content. There's a lot of browser choice at the moment in Android. And so Opera, Chrome, and Firefox all have Android-compatible browsers that have WebGL available to you. And again, it's not something which you have to switch on. It's something that just comes as standard in the browser. So what with the sort of GPU capabilities of today's mobile devices, this means that a large proportion of phones actually have WebGL available to them right now. Again, there is one big question, and that is the current situation with iOS, which still doesn't allow WebGL in the Safari browser. It only allows it in its iAds interface. So again, it's not really about the capability of the machine, but more about whether or not they want to switch it on. Again, that's well, if anything, more of an unknown than the browser situation. But I think that with several independent vendors coming up with their own WebGL implementations on iOS, it shouldn't be long before something happens there too. So we're hoping, keeping our fingers crossed, I should say, that it's going to be a good day for WebGL one day on iOS. Before I go on, actually, I just want to switch over quickly and show you a few things on the Android mobile. Hey. Oh, okay. It's decided to go to the lock screen, so you get to see my dogs. Okay. This is the same Globe demo running in the Android Chrome browser. And this is something which hasn't been optimized in any way. This is literally just the same page from the Typescript.Away3D.com demo site. And it's running exactly as you'd expect. Everything looks fine. The shaders look great. The performance is actually pretty good, considering that it is non-optimized for mobile devices. And there's several others running in the background here that I can load up. So this one is another conversion that we did recently. This is using our particle engine in Away3D, and it's running pretty well. It's running almost at 60 frames a second. This is on a Galaxy S4. So obviously we have pretty first-gen hardware, but I think that it's still a good indicator of the possibilities for this in the future. And certainly from a gaming perspective, I think that WebGL is something which has a lot of potential. And again, here's the same Fire demo from earlier. Again, running 60 frames a second without any trouble at all. So yeah, it's actually looking very nice on mobile at the moment. The last thing I want to talk about is I've got very little time left, so I'll be quick. Hang on a second, I'll switch back. Is to do with tooling and workflow. So currently we have a tool called Away Builder, which you can find by going to awaytools.com. Away Builder uses AWD, which is a file format that is specifically tailored for Away3D use. And recently we converted the importer to Away3D TypeScript. So now you can actually use Away Builder to export 3D animations and models to Away3D TypeScript. I'll just give you a very quick demo. So this is a model that we have. This is Away Builder, and this is a model that we have in Away Builder. This is something that actually uses Bones animation. You can see it being played back here. And I can open the same model up in Away3D TypeScript. And for some reason he's not animating. I was trying to just get this working just before this started this today, but trust me, it does work, and it is something which we're still working on. But this is a complex model being loaded directly from Away Builder into Away3D TypeScript, and we think that that's a very useful way of using a workflow for WebGL development in future. And obviously, Away3D Away Builder is something that we're actively developing. Okay, so I think that is it. Thank you very much.
Really short of time. We have time just for one question. У нас есть время только для одного вопроса. Есть у кого-то?
Is it free?
I think so.
Yes, I should say Away3D and everything we do, Away Builder and AWD, is all free and open source without any licensing restrictions. So yes.
I want to ask you about the performance between Flash version and WebGL version. Thank you.
Okay, well, the side-by-side demos was trying to illustrate that, but the main thing we found at the moment is that WebGL is as good on the fastest browsers as Stage 3D, and so we think that that's a very good indicator for the future in terms of performance across the board. But Chrome currently is the browser that is the fastest, and as far as we can tell, it pretty much matches the speeds that we have in Stage 3D at the moment in Flash.
Is it real to build a real-time strategy on the web using the Away3D? Or a less complex one?
Yes, I think it absolutely is. We are still developing the library for production use. So currently we have a few features missing that we're still converting. But I think that once we get to that stage of full conversion, then yes, we can absolutely use it for things like RPG games and the like, and all other types of 3D game. Absolutely.
Unfortunately, we are totally out of time. But if you want to ask more questions, feel free to catch him after the lecture, before he leaves the room. Можете поймать докладчика. Если у вас еще вопросы есть, у нас времени совсем не осталось, можете ловить Роба, пока он не убежал из аудитории.